Okay, so when you launch your Eclipse, and then you can go to the projects for CSE114, week 7, lab 1. So we're going to build on top of lab 1 here. So today, basically, we're going to write only less than 10 lines of code into this project, new lines. But the idea conceptually is going to be a little bit challenging, so I'm going to go very slowly. And we have to go very closely with the breakpoints and debugger to see how the objects and classes work. So let's just review quickly what we have achieved last time. So we agreed that we are going to have two classes, 3 classes in total, but the main 2 classes we're going to consider will be the course. So in the course class, we decided that we should have 4 attributes. We should have a name, we should have the number of credits for the course, and whether or not the course is mandatory, and also what should be the final letter grade for the course. And one important detail to note, if you look at the constructor for the course template or the course class, we are only trying to initialize 3 of the 4 attributes, which means we are leaving letter grade unassigned. Okay? So in some way that makes sense, because in real life, you wouldn't actually know what your final grade is when you first register your course. You only know about that at the end of the semester. That's why initially you might have a course CSE114, 4 credits, and it is mandatory. And then we also have a way to say, so here, this is the only method we have in the course class. So this kind of method, which will change the value of the attributes, in this case, letter grades. So this kind of method is called mutator, because it's going to mutate the value of the attributes. So let's see how we can manipulate the objects of courses, and then I'll show you some diagram. So let's go to the registration system tester. So we only created 1 course last time, but I just created 2 more, just to show you actually. So you can feel free to type as well. So now for lines 5, 6, and 7, so we have 3 lines here, creating 3 instances. Line number 5, we're creating a new course instance called CSE114 for gym. And that one you can see the course name and 4 credits, and it is mandatory. That's why we give true. And similarly for 214, we also give 4 credits and true. And another one, let's say for physics 131, and that one, the name is different. And also we have 3 credits, let's say, and also let's say it's optional, it's not mandatory. So let's say after 5, 6, and 7, this is actually what's going to happen at the runtime. Let me show you a diagram. Hopefully that can clarify things. So if I show you, so this will be sort of the how the object will look like. So you can see here, we actually have 3 objects here. So we have CSE114 for gym, 214 for gym, and physics 131 for gym. We have 3 objects here. Each one of them is actually an instance of the course class. That's why you see the course over here. And you can see each one of them has 4 attributes: name, number of credits, is mandatory or not, and letter grade. And because we have not initialized the letter grade yet, so that's why it simply points to null, which means no letter grade yet. And for the name here, you can see because we initialized 214 to be the string, CSE214, that's why it points to a string. And for other values here, you can see credits will be 4, mandatory to be true, and here mandatory to be false, etc. So this corresponds to the 3 lines. And this is also exactly what we're going to see in the debugger. Okay, that's conceptually what's going to happen. And let me just go back to Eclipse, and let's try the debugger just to make sure you know how to observe the objects. So I'm going to show you something. So put a breakpoint in line number 5. So that means the execution is going to stop right before we try to create the objects for CSE114 for gym. Let's do the following. So if you try to debug, you would say run debug as Java application. So now we stop at line number 5 over there. And before we simply say step over. And now this time we're going to do something slightly different. We're going to say something called step into. So this is the button we used to click. You can see that's one is called the step over button there. But now we're going to try the one besides that. It's something called step into. which means line number 5, we're actually going to call the constructor from the course class and try to initialize the attributes using its body implementation. So now we're going to see how exactly it actually occurs. So now at this line, line number 5 here, instead of saying step over, we're going to say step into. If you say that, you can see now we are now changing from the tester into the course. So now we are in the course, and now we are right in the beginning of the course constructor here. And over there, we are now trying to assign the name to be some value, the number of credits to be some value, and its mandatory to be some value. To see what those values are, you can see over here, under variables, you can see these are the values for the parameters, the argument value. Because for CSE114 for gym, we're going to initialize the name to be CSE114. The number of credits should be 4, and its mandatory should be true, right? We're going to initialize these. Before I do that, let's have a look at another thing. There's something called this, which I'll talk about later on in the class. This simply means the objects that we are trying to create currently, because we are trying to create an object for the CSE114. If you expand this, you will see that, so this is actually really the critical point. So now, have a look at here. Over here, you can see this over there is actually a course object. Its mandatory is simply default, which is false. And letter grade points to nothing, so that's why it's null. No name yet, so null. And the number of credits is 0. However, somehow, in the constructor, we're going to assign this value here to the name of the course. And then we're going to assign the number of credits to the number of credits here, and etc. That's how we initialize the objects. Okay? Let's see how this occurs. So we'll go slowly one by one. So let me just expand this a little bit, and then we'll see. So now let's, so this time we're going to say step over, so we don't want to step into. Every time when you say step into, you want to go into the method that you're trying to call, but in this time now. So we'd say step over. So now we are at the point right before we try to set the name of the course to be CSE114. So now watch for, so you can see currently the name is still null. It's not been set yet. If I say step over now, it's been set to CSE114. That's because of the assignments. And now, similarly, you can see currently for the number of credits, it is still the default value 0. However, if I execute this line here, it's going to set it to be 4. Right? That's what the constructor is doing. And now for its mandatory, and you can see the value we want to assign will be true. But currently, the value for that is simply just false. So we're going to change that as well. So if I say step over again, you can see that's changed from false to true. Okay, that's how the constructor works. Okay, if you do such a thing here, so now that's why after line number 5, so now we are in line number 5 here, and if you say step over now, so that's why after line number 5, so now we are in line number 6. That means line number 5 has been executed. So if you see now for CSE114 for gym, you do have all the desired values for the attributes. You see you have for the name, you have CSE114. And for credits, you have 4. And for its mandatory, you have true. Right? I'm just showing you slow motion, how the constructor works. Questions? That's something I didn't show you last time, but it might be a little bit too complicated last time. Okay, so what I have just shown you is how to use the debugger to see how the constructor works to initialize the objects. Let me do one more thing for you, just to compare. Okay, now let's go on and step over. Now I'm now in line number 7. Line number 7, I'm right at the point before I try to create the objects called physics131 for gym. Okay, it's going to run through exactly the same procedure. Okay, but now you can see that the argument value now will be different because we have physics131 and we have 3 and we have false. So this time it's going to be different. If I say step into again, so now we are again in the constructor of the course. You can see this time now, for the objects we are trying to assign, again, they have the default value false, null, and 0. And the values we want to assign to them is simply physics 131, 3 credits, and false for mandatory, right? So now this time we are trying to execute the same code, but with different values for the arguments. Okay. If you try to do that, so now watch what's going to change for the name. If you say step over, okay, the name will be changed to physics now, and then the number of credits will be changed to 3 over here, and then its mandatory will remain to be false because it's optional. Okay, so this is how the 3 objects are constructed. Okay, any questions so far? No? Very good. Okay, that's about the course, and then let's move on to the student record. So again, I'm trying to review. So what I'm going to show you today will make sense. So let's go to the student record class. Similar, we have student ID, we have first name, we have last name, we have program of study, year of study, and etc. Okay. Line number 9 is the attribute I would like to focus on today because the type of the attribute is more complicated than usual. Because here you say this attribute here, rather than a single course, is going to be an array of course objects. But what does that mean? I'm going to show you some diagram as well. But let's just double check with one thing. So if you can see, this is the constructor for the student record, which means if you want to create an object of type student record, you have to give this much information. Let me ask you this. If I simply just do the following, if I simply delete this to be empty, what's going to happen? I delete this to be empty here. Yes,
if you delete it to be empty, then the class student record will not be able to assign the values that you input into the global variable.
In some way, they are just ignored.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me just, very good, exactly the point. Let me verify that for you. So if you go to the tester again, and let's now go to the student record gym, for example. I'm going to put a breakpoint line number 24. You can see in line number 24, I'm trying to assign the student number, Jim, first name, Davis, last name, 1 would be like he's a freshman, so it's a first year. And then he's expected to graduate 2020, something like that. Okay. So I'm going to run the debugger again. Okay, let me just run it properly. Run. It's actually blocking my vision, so I'll just put it here. That's easier. Okay, so I'm going to step over, and then now I'm now in line number 24, right before I try to create the gym student record. Now I'm going to do the same trick. I'm going to step into the constructor for student record and see what happens. If I say step into here rather than step over, if you go for step into, now I'm now at this constructor here, student record. You can see the body implementation there is simply empty, which means we're not going to do anything to the attribute values. As you can see, if you see, again, this is the object we are trying to create. You can see here, first name is simply null. First name is null. Last name is null. Program study is null. Register course is null. And student ID is default 0. And the year of study is 0, etc. Right? If you simply try to step over to execute this body here, which is empty, if you try to do that, you can see the attribute values there simply don't change. That's why you do have to have some meaningful body implementation there. Okay. So let me stop here and then go back and just undo. If I undo, you can see now this will be the body implementation you should be able to write, which will somehow use, for example, the argument value student ID to assign to the value for student ID attributes. Okay, that's sort of the point. And I'm sure you can use the debugger to double check that. I'll let you do it. Okay, so let me show you one thing here. Let me show you some diagram now. If I simply have the empty body here, empty constructor body. And then I try to run in the tester this line over here to say Jim is initialized to be a student record with this information. What's going to happen? This is what's going to happen here. No, not this one, sorry. It would be this one. So this is a diagram you should really also understand. So you can see over here, we do have Jim over there, and it's a student record. You can see student record class has this many attributes: student ID, first name, last name, program, which year, expected year of graduation, registered courses. Because we haven't assigned any meaningful values to them yet, because it's empty body. So you can see student ID's default value is 0. First name, last name, they are strings, so they point to nothing. They haven't been assigned yet. And year of study simply 0 default. This one is default as well. Okay. However, if we do have the meaningful implementation body for the constructor, this is what you will have. This. In this case, you can see now it does make a huge difference. You can see now student ID has been set to the proper student ID, and now we have Jim, Davis, computer science, proper strings. However, registered courses we decide we're not going to initialize that in the constructor, so that's fine. This is something we're going to focus on today. Questions so far? Some of you guys are lucky because I didn't have these diagrams for yesterday. So I think all those guys are already confused after the first 15 minutes, I think. That's why I'm also recording today. Okay, if no questions, I'm going to go on with how we are supposed to deal with the registered courses. Yes, questions?
So the student record is called the class course.
Let me see. I'm not sure about your question, but let me go back to Eclipse first. So what's your question? Say that again.
So in student record,
yeah.
We call the class course, right?
Yes.
So why don't we just put the value in course class rather than calling it then 1, 2, 3 again in the registration system?
You mean course over here?
Yeah.
Oh, the reason that we have this is because we say for each student record, they have their associated list of registered courses. That's why I put it there. Okay. Yeah. So you can think of student record is like for Jim, for Jonathan, for Simon. So each student, like for example, you has some certain registered courses, which must be very different from what Fabio is registered for, right? So that should be separate. Yeah, that's why. Okay, I'm going to just undo this, and then let's think about how we are supposed to deal with this attribute here. And let me just get rid of that thing there. Okay, let me start from here. As we understand, after this constructor here, we will have the registered courses being null because we have not initialized that yet. Let's make some assumption here. Let's say each student during their degree, they can take no more than 30 courses. Let's say that's the case. If that's the case, at some point we would like to allow the student to register for some course. In this case, because we said we shouldn't do it in the constructor, because you don't necessarily know what you're going to register later on in first year, second year, third year. So we need a method here. So let's define a method which will somehow change the value for this attribute here. That's something we should do. Okay.
So void.
Void, very good, because we want a mutator.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, you know that you're going to change the value for this attribute. That means you need a mutator, and that means you have to have a void. Let's do that, and then I'll show you what the issue is. Okay, let's try that. So we're going to say void because it's going to be a mutator. Change the value of registered courses. Void. So why don't we just call that register course? So we now have to decide, as part of the signature of this method, so what input parameter should we put at all, if we want to put any? When we say we want to register a course for Jim, for example, so what kind of input should we give, or or we shouldn't give any input at all?
All the inputs we required in course, like the course name.
Course name and
it's mandatory.
exactly. In some way, yes. But so Fabio, what you're suggesting is maybe something like this. If I understand you correctly, you're saying something like string course name, and then also maybe Boolean is, and very good. And let me just put these for now. That's a very good start. But didn't we already have a class called course already? So doing this is fine, but it'll be much more convenient and much more reusable, much more convenient if we can simply pass rather than separate information that a course requires. Why don't we just pass a course objects?
So we use course as our
Input parameter type.
parameter.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, that's something new to you, I know, but let's try that and see what happens. Okay. So I think that's certainly a good start. If you think about, since you want to register a course, you want to pass all the information about the course. But somehow we already summarize all those information as attributes of a course template. So why don't we just pass an instance of the course template? That'd be much more convenient. So we don't have to type so much.
But what if we haven't created an instance and we would like that instance in the future to also use this template?
So you can assume at the time you want to call this method for register course, that means the course must be there already. So you should always create a course first before you can register the student for that. Okay. So what I would suggest would be, we'll do the following. Rather than saying all this information separately, we just say course C. Just say that, course C. Okay, that's the first thing you should really think about. So what kind of input parameter should we put for the registered course? So now, another question for you. Think about, once you get this course over here, how should you somehow register that into the array? So since we got registered courses as an array, of course, right? That's something to think. Let's say if you simply have an array of integers, how do you store an integer into it? You simply say, for example, A1 or A0 is assigned to the integer, right? That's what you would do. Let's just try something very simple. Why don't we simply assign this course, whatever course it is, to the first position in the registration list? Let's start from that, okay? Let's do that and see what happens. If you simply say register courses, so I'm just going to copy and paste. Let's say always the first elements here. Oh, you should. By the way, you should really know why this line wouldn't work. Okay, if you simply say register courses is assigned to be C, this would not compile. You can see that if you move your mouse over the Eclipse, Eclipse shows you that the type mismatch. So you can see that on the left-hand side, you actually have an array of course. On the right-hand side, you have a single course, so you don't have any matching types. That's why the assignment wouldn't work. So you should really say, I'm going to specify single slots in the array. Let's say always the first slot. Let's say always. Okay, so now the only lines we have added are lines 20 to 22. We have created a new method, a mutator method. Return type void, name, register course, with one input parameter, which will take a course objects. And we always assign that course objects to the first slots in the registration list. That's what we have done. Once we have done this, why don't we just go back to the tester and see how this works? Okay. If we go back and let's see. So you can see now, somehow we would like to, for example, say gym. So we got Jim's student record already. If you say gym dot, so now if you type red, you will see register course is there already. So now you can see Eclipse is very clever. So once you have that, Eclipse even actually suggested some candidates you can put. So now you can put CSE114 for gym, CSE114 for gym, or Physics 131 for gym, because all of them are instances of the course. So you can use either one of them. So let's say I want to do CSE114 for gym. Okay, again, this line is more complicated than before conceptually, because before you will simply pass, for example, you will only pass maybe integer or string value, but this time we are passing something that's actually an object. I'm going to show you in a moment how this looks like in the diagram in a moment, but not yet. Okay, so this line you're also going to think about that, why this is the case. Okay, let's say we want to register CSE114 for gym. Let's see if this will really be assigned to the course. And again, to verify that, we have to go to the debugger. Let me just remove the previous breakpoint, and let me put a breakpoint right beside this line over here, line 25. Put it there, and if I launch the debugger, so now we are now at the point here. Okay, so I should have removed that. Okay, let me step over again. Okay, so now we are in this line over here, line 25. So now we are right before the point we try to register the course for gym. And just to make sure you understand correctly, so if you, again, go under variables, you will see that we have Jim, who is a student record. And currently, his registered courses is simply null. And we also have a course object called CSE114 for Jim. Under that, you actually got all the information you need. So that's why Fabio's initial suggestion could be improved. Because rather than passing all the information separately, we can just pass in objects directly. Okay, that's the sort of the justification. Okay, so now let's step into this method and see if it really does the thing we expect. If you step into it, so now we are now at line 21, but now we are actually in the student record class over here, and now we are trying to assign course C. Also in Eclipse, if you just move your mouse over this C over here, it also shows you all the information about the objects. That's also very handy in Eclipse. So now you can see we're trying to assign this CSE114 with all the correct information there to the first slot of registered courses. And now, up to this point, let me ask you, can you think of any issue we might run into if I click step over? Yes, Odin?
The question is, what if there's already a value in registered courses of 0? Wouldn't we want to set the value of C to a different array point?
That's certainly one point, yes. But we're getting something that's more immediate. That's certainly something we'll handle in a moment, certainly. Anything else? Let me give you a hint. Let me give you a hint before I hit the step over. If you have a look at the constructor, remember when we initialize the gym's record, we try to initialize the student ID, first name, last name, year of study, expected year of graduation. And immediately after that, we try to register a course for him. And this method here is going to assign the course, in this case CSE114, to the first slot of the registered courses. Is there anything wrong here you can think of? There's something wrong here, but that's subtle, very subtle. Well, let me ask you this way. At this point here, what would be the value for registered courses?
All the values in the object for the.
But let's say, because registered courses is actually an array.
Ah.
We know it's an array of course. So currently at line 21, when we are trying to call that the first time, what would be the value for registered courses?
No, but I mean, it doesn't exist because we didn't define the length of the array.
Somehow you can see, okay, very good point. Okay, now let me just try to make it more precise. You can see in the constructor there, we did not initialize the array. We did not say array equals new array of size certain size. We didn't say that. That's why in the diagram, I actually show you this. I just recall the diagram here. You can see we got everything else initialized except for the register courses. So that one there points to nothing. How can you assign something to the first slot of nothing? How can you do that? So that's sort of the wrong thing. So this is a very typical error in Java, which means you're trying to somehow assign something to something else, but you just have nothing there. Okay? That's I'm going to see many examples later. But this is the first introduction. Let's see what's going to happen here. More precisely, so if you go back to Eclipse here, you can see now over here, if you move your mouse over, you simply say register courses simply null. How can you get the first elements of null? How can you find that? It's simply nothing there. Okay, so that's why if you say step over, you're going to have the following. You simply are going to have just step over, and that's a very typical exception in Java. It's so-called the null pointer exception. Okay, I will explain that a little bit later, but you can see it's something to do with null. Because register courses was simply null, and you cannot try to locate the first slot in a null place and then try to assign there. Okay, that's the reason. Okay, we kind of know what the reason is. Now my question for you, how do you think we can address this? Yes, Bowden?
I remember when we were doing the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to make the array change size as you input, you just set it up to array is equal to size
Certain
100.
size. Yeah, certain size. You can make some assumption about how many numbers you might have in a sequence.
And since we are assuming that we only can take 30 classes for our
degree,
we should make the size 30.
Very good. So now, very good, very good. So let's say we want to initialize the register courses array to be of size 30. Now, my question for you, where should we put that line? I got two candidates for you. You can either put immediately after line number 16, or you can put it immediately before line 21. There are two choices here. Sorry, let me say more precisely. So two choices. Two choices. First choice, you can hit enter here, and then put it as part of the constructor. Choice number two, you can hit enter here, and do it as the first thing for this method here. One or two. You got two choices. Two. One. Justify. Why one? Not two. Oh, let me just before I say anything, I can tell you that choices 1 and 2, both of them will get rid of the null pointer exception, both of them. However, one of the choices is still wrong. It's still wrong. Still wrong. One of them is still wrong. Only one of them is correct.
I say choice 1.
Choice 1. Okay, Kelly, would you like to justify, or we can let you think?
When we declare that course array, we declared it as a variable.
Yes.
So I think it makes more sense than to put it
As part of the constructor. Because somehow you just want to initialize that when you first create the objects. Okay, that's fine, that's fine. That's good enough. Bowden, would you like to say anything?
I just think that it's risky putting it after. Because if you...
After what? What do you mean?
Like if you put it right after the void.
Oh, you mean after here?
Yeah, right. I think it's risky.
Risky? What do you mean risky?
Like if you try to input C and then send it to registered courses, the length of, like set it into registered courses, the array, and you didn't initialize it previous to the what you're doing right now, it might end up just sending C to null and then initializing the course. Or initializing the array. That's what I think. I just think if you do it before, there's more chance that the array will be initialized before you send it.
Yeah, because remember. Yeah, very good. So because remember, the very first method you will ever call on an object is the constructor. That will be always the case, always the first method. So now the correct answer will be choice 1. But now I would like to show you why. Choice 2, you can also get rid of the null pointer exception, but it is still wrong, and very wrong. Okay, I'll show you why. Now let me try choice 2 first, okay, and then we'll go back to the correct choice. If I do that, so hopefully you know how to write a syntax here. How do I say I would like to assign register courses to be an array of course of size 30? New, very good. And so you would say course with 30, right? Very good, fantastic. So this line here will guarantee before you actually try to assign the first slot to be course C, then you guarantee you have something that's not null. That's guaranteed, okay? But let me show you why it is very wrong, okay? Let me just go back to tester. And I would like to just register another course for Jim to illustrate the point. If I do this, what about I also say 214? So I'm going to register 2 courses in a row. 114 and then 214. And I'm going to stop at the same point over there. And let's see what happens. Now if I run the debugger again, oops, let me run debug as that. Okay, now I'm stopped here. So now I'm stopped at line 25. So this is right before I register 114 for Jim. At this point, the registered courses array is still null, right? We know that. If I step into it, you can see that now I'm now in the beginning of register course, and we do have the new line that we defined. Okay, this line 21 here is going to guarantee that we're going to at the same time. Let me have a look. So you can see now register courses here is simply null right before we do that. Now you can now watch the change for register courses right before we initialize it to be an array of size 30. If I do that, step over, you can see now no longer null. And you can, if you expand it, you will see you actually got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 29. Right? That's why it's size 30. Each one of them is actually null. Don't worry about that. I'll explain that in a moment. That seems to work. So now, if I try to execute line number 22, and if I do that, it's going to assign the first elements in the array to be CSE114. The same code is going to be executed again if we try to register another course. So can you now see what kind of issue we might have?
You're initializing the array, and then once you initialize it again, your value is erased.
Fantastic. Up, spot on. Okay. So what Bowden said was, every time when we are trying to call the same method, so the same block of code will be executed. The only difference is what argument value are we going to use in order to execute a block of code. The first time we're going to use CSE114. The second time we're going to use CSE214. But now, after the first time, we do have one element in the array, which is CSE114. But when the second time you're trying to call the same method, it is always going to reinitialize the array to be a brand new one, which will wipe out whatever you have before. Logically, that's very wrong. Okay, very good. So let's verify that. Fantastic. Okay, let's go on. So now we are at line up 26, right before we try to register the second course. And now if you move your mouse over there, you can see Jim over here. You can see for Jim, he got his registered courses there. And the first course he got is simply CSE114. Okay, over here, just double check. Now let's step into it. If you step into it, so now you can see we are going to reinitialize the array from the array with one element into a brand new array, which will essentially erase everything we got. That's not correct. Okay? If we do that, and now you will see that if you see the registered courses array for him, you will see that now we still have only one course. Sorry, not yet. Let me do step over again. If you step over again, So now you will see that the first course becomes 214, and 114 is simply gone because it has been wiped out by the line. Questions? If you are still confused, so please watch the video. Okay, just watch that slow motion, and hopefully that can help. Do you need one more explanation, or you're fine? Anna, you're fine. Good.
I have a
Fabio,
question.
yeah.
Why can't we like initialize the array right when we
You mean the constructor?
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
No,
that
in the top of the
The global
Where we-
variables.
Actually, that might work, but that's not really recommended style. I would suggest every time when you're trying to initialize the attributes, do that in the constructor. It's better. Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Feel free to help people. No worries. Yeah. I'll try to maybe help you more after the session. No worries. Okay. So now let's stop that. And now let me just recap before we move on. So we have just said that. So there are two places where you can initialize the registered courses array. Two places. Either you can do it here, but that one we know is very wrong. Because I mean, every time when you're trying to register a new course, you're going to call the same method, and it's going to reinitialize the array every time, which is going to wipe out all the previous contents. So choice one seems to be more promising. So we are going to put this line over here in here, which makes a huge difference. Yes.
But is it okay to put the registered courses array in this given record? Because we didn't really, how do I say, declare that integer string thing for the parentheses.
So I don't quite follow. So what do you mean?
I mean, you said we're gonna put the registered courses and new ones bracket thing
Yes.
in the string record method,
Yes.
but we didn't really declare the parentheses part for the registered courses.
Parameter. Actually, because this is actually the attributes. That's okay. Your work actually, because remember, registered courses is actually an attributes, and attribute is actually visible to all the methods, so you can use that in all the methods. Yes. Okay. So let me cut that line, and put it there. Okay, so this, you can see changing one line from one method to the constructor makes a huge difference. The difference is the constructor will always be called first when you first create the objects. On the other hand, for mutator or for accessor method, they might be called more than one time. And every time when you're trying to call them, the same block of code is going to be executed. Okay, very good. So now let's see if. So now we actually do have the courses there. So we go to initialize that. So this is going to be the diagram. Okay. Don't be too terrified by that. It's a little bit complicated. That looks like this. So the only thing that's different from before, you can see we still have Jim, it's the variable there. We have Jim, Davis, computer science, but now you can see registered courses is now not null anymore. So it is pointing to an array starting from 0 index up to 29, size 30, right? And you can see because each one of the courses has not been registered yet. That's why they are simply pointing to null. Hopefully that helps you understand. Hopefully. Very good. So now what we would like to do is to say every time when we are trying to register a new course, we're going to, for example, CSE114, CSE214, Physics 131, etc. To put it in the, gradually, to eventually maybe fill up the array. Okay. Now let's see if the current code will do the job. Let's go to. Actually, that's sort of the issue Bowden just mentioned in the very beginning.
What?
Yeah.
I was talking about
Talking about it's always going to write the first position.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
how do we make it
Yeah,
so
very
we
good.
can write
Let me
the
just
49?
illustrate to the class again why it is the case. Okay. So now let's see again if this code will actually do what we expect that to do. So let's just run it again. Then we go back to tester here, and then we're going to run a debugger. Okay, now we are right before, we're now at line 25, right before register the first course for gym. As you can see now, if you go move over gym, you can see now register courses there is now already not now. It simply has the 30 slots pointing to now, because in the constructor we have initialized that already to be an array of 30. And if we step into, we're going to say assign the first slot to be CSE114. Okay? If you only register one course, this is going to work. If you do that, step over, and then you will see that registered courses there, the first course is indeed CSE114. So this one's okay. However, if you try to step over, if you now try to register the second course, the same block of code will be executed again, right? If you step into it, you can now see the argument value C over here is actually CSE214, right? Because we're trying to register a second course. But now, this time, we're saying assign CSE214 to the first slot. But first slot was already taken by CSE114, right? So somehow you will again lose CSE114. So it's not good enough. You're getting there, but not good enough. Don't worry, you know, it's not in the quiz tomorrow, so I still have time to get through it. Okay, so I just want you to understand why this is not good enough. Because every time when you're trying to register a new course, you're always going to assign to the first slots. You're supposed to say somehow you want to maintain a counter to say, so far I have got this many courses. If you want to register for a new one, go to the next slot. That's sort of the idea. Okay? It's a little bit like for your Fibonacci sequence example. When you are trying to read in numbers from the user, because you assume the sequence is not going to be longer than 100, let's say. So every time, the first number should be stored in index 0. The second number should be in index 1, index 2, etc. It's going to be something very similar to this. So now we would like to declare a counter. Okay. However, knowing that we got to declare counter is not good enough. We got to decide where to declare the counter. So where should we put a counter?
Before we declare the method?
Yeah, that's something. If you okay, so what you were suggesting was to say something outside the method, right? But so outside the method, that means it has to be an attributes. Because anything that's outside the method is attributes. Okay. So now again, there are two choices here. Two choices. Either you can say. So two choices. Choice one, you can say, I can say integer counter here, initially to be 0. Two choices here. And then, when I try to assign, the first time, I'm always going to follow the value of the counter. And after each registration, I'm going to increment the counter. Okay, that's choice number one. Kind of similar to before, right? We also got two choices, right? So now choice number one, we initialize some counter in the method here to be 0, and then the first time we expect the counter is 0, so we should store into position 0. And then we increment the counter to be 1, hoping that next time it's going to be stored in position 1.
But that's wrong because every time you execute that method, it's gonna reinitialize.
Exactly. You can see that's exactly the pattern. Yeah, I'm so glad you actually realized that. So choice number one doesn't work. So we don't even have to bother verifying that. Okay. If you're not sure, please watch a video. Watch a previous example. So now, very good. So now, where should we put counter?
The constructor.
Okay, that's also that's a second choice. If you do that, let's try. if you do this, it's not even going to compile. How come?
No. Let's put it in the global variables then.
Yeah. So first of all, that would be the right solution. But let's understand why this wouldn't compile. You can see line number 18 there. We are simply trying to declare a variable called counter here that will only be visible within this method here. Okay. However, if you declare a variable outside of these two methods, like the attributes, it will be visible throughout the whole class. Okay. That's what the idea. Okay. So we should declare that over there. So you should do something like this: integer counter. Oops. Okay, integer counter here. And then it would be not so necessary if you say counter equals 0, because the default value for integer is 0 anyway, but doesn't hurt. So you can see now, this again is a critical point. So we have decided that we should declare an integer counter as an attribute, so that every time when we are trying to execute the same block of code to register the courses, we'll actually somehow accumulate its value from 1 to something higher, right? Okay, so again, you can see we declare one integer attribute here, and then in this registerCourse method here, we also try to increment its value every time after we register the current course. So for the next one, you will actually move to the position to the right. Okay, let's verify that. You can see there are many minor details today, but it's recorded, so you can certainly follow that when you maybe after your test today. Okay, let's debug again. So now let's see. So now we are right before registering the course for gym, the 114. So if we step into it, you will see that. So now we're going to, the counter value currently is simply 0. If you move your mouse over, currently it is 0, because that's initialized to be 0. So we're going to assign CSE114 to be index 0 there. If you do this, step over. Now, if you look at, for this object here, registerCourses, you can see now at index 0 there, you do have CSE114. And line number 25 over here is going to increment the counter. After this, you're going to see counter value now becomes 1, from 0 to 1. Okay, step over again. So you can see that accumulation is not going to be lost. It's going to be there for the objects. And if you go further again, so now you see, now we're going to register the second course for gym. And remember, so now let's see for gym, you can see gym over here, the counter value currently is simply 1. So that means when we want to register this course here, 214, it's going to be stored at index 1, not 0 anymore. So that seems to work. So if you step into it, so now we're going to assign counter value will be 1, which means we're going to assign 214 to position 1. And then after that, you will see that for gym there, the registerCourses, you can see now we do have course 1 and course 2, right? The first course is actually 114. Second course is 214. And then after this line here, we're going to increment the value further. And now counter value is 2, and so on, right? So you can register for as many as you like, as long as less than 30. Okay, any questions? Yes.
What happens once the counter is equal to 30 and you want to register another course?
Very good question. So there are two choices. You mean 29 actually?
Yeah.
Cannot be 30. 29 will be the last index.
No, if it's equal to 30, like because right after.
Oh yes, exactly. Right after 29 will be increment 30.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very good. There are two choices here. Either you can say if the counter value is equal to 30, you'll print out some. You can say system out the print line saying, I'm sorry, the registration list is full. You cannot do any more. Or you can somehow resize the array. But that's actually a more complicated case, which you don't have to worry about for this course. You will learn about that in 214. Okay, so certainly printing out an error message will be fine.
So if it's a void, then how do we put out an error message if we can't do anything because it's a mutator and not whatever the other
So
one is?
mutator would simply mean we cannot return any value back to whoever is calling the method.
Yeah.
But we can certainly print something to the console. That's something totally different.
Okay.
Yeah. So one is about whoever is calling the method. The other one is about the console. They're totally different.
We can put the error message in that void method.
You can do that. Let me show you. Very good questions. Very good question. So let me see. Let me show you here. If you see, so let's say if the counter happens to be 30. In this case, we know that it is full. And I can even show you actually. Print line, and then okay, you can put an error here. Otherwise, that means it is not equal to 30. So maybe you can even have things like this, larger than equal to, because logically, the negation of larger than or equal to will be less than, right? So that would be, okay. So you only do the normal procedure when the counter is strictly less than 30, okay? So let's try to see if this will work. I'm going to do lots of copy and paste over here. So we have 2 over here, 4, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. Okay, I just want to make sure the counter keeps accumulating. So we got 30 already, right? I believe, yeah, from 54 minus 24, yeah, it's 30. We got 30 courses now. So far we are fine. So let's make sure we are fine. I'm going to see. Let's put a breakpoint in the last one. Okay, and then if you run the debugger here, you will see that currently the count of a gym is 29. That's the last course you can register. And if you step into it, and then counter larger than or equal to 30, that's not the case because it's 29. So you will still go into the else branch, okay, and register. But now you're going to increment the counter to be 30. Okay, so let me stop the debugger here. Let me just add one more course. Okay, so now we're going to actually do the following. Go to tester here. And then I'm going to
I have a question about the if statement.
Sure, let me
Be greater than and equal to necessary.
Oh, let me be with you in a moment. Yeah, that's a very good question. Okay, let me just put the breakpoint over here. So we added one more course. So now we got 31. Let me finish this and now answer your question. So we got 31 courses now. So this is the 31st course. And then if you run the debugger again, so now we are right before we are trying to add the 31st course. And currently the counter is 30. And then if you actually see the registered courses there, just to double check, you can see it got all of them assigned to be something. They are not now anymore. If you step into it, and now, because counter value is actually 30, so you're actually going to enter this branch here and then print out the error message to the console. And then you can see now in the console there, you do have error, registration list is full. And then you're going to skip the else part for sure. So which means you can no longer add any course. Yeah. Okay, back to your question. Okay. So that's about it. So let me just answer Bowden's question, which was about if this, why can we not write just equal rather than
What about if we do equal?
equal? I tell you what, equal will also work. But if you think about logic, okay, think about logic here. Remember when we say if and else.
Yeah.
So we'd say else is only going to occur when the if condition is not true. Okay. if you simply put the equal here, if you put the equal here, so that means you can reach the else either when counter is less than 30 or counter is greater than 30.
Yes.
Logically speaking, right? So although in this case it's not going to occur, so equal is going to work. So yeah, just logically, it will actually be better if you say, because you can see the more about logical negation thing. So here, if you say greater than or equal to, that means the negation of that is always less than. So
Okay.
it has more logical guarantee. So don't worry too much. You can do either equal or larger than or equal. That's both are fine.
It's just larger than equal.
Yeah.
Basically, make sure that all of the numbers greater than 30.
Yeah.
It's just in this case, counter cannot be greater than 30.
Actually, in some way, if you put larger than or equal to, you will guarantee you will only reach this range when counter is less than 30. It's guaranteed.
Yeah.
However, if you only say equal here, but what if counter is 31?
The counter is 31.
Then you can still come in here.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But in this case, equal will work. So I wouldn't want to go too far. Okay, very good. So now it seems to work. And any questions so far? That's about it for today. So I think many small details here, but at least you get a big picture of where I'm going. So try to follow the video again, and then tomorrow I'll actually review all the diagrams in the lecture. So maybe with some help with the board. Okay. If you have no questions, and I'll see you tomorrow. And best of luck to your test if you have one.
Yep.
Yeah, best of luck to that as well.
Physics quiz.
215 physics quiz, and then the quiz.
1 and 4.
We're gonna have to write our own